Your liver does not hurt when it is in trouble. That is the first thing you need to understand. It has almost no pain-sensing nerve fibers in its interior. It can be quietly accumulating fat, slowly developing scar tissue, and progressively losing its ability to filter your blood for years without sending you a single noticeable signal. And by the time it does send a signal, the damage has often been developing for a decade or more. This is not a theoretical concern. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, now affects an estimated 38% of all adults in the United States. That is more than 1 in 3 people, and the prevalence has increased by 50% in the last 30 years alone. But here's the part that connects directly to you. The rate of NAFLD rises sharply after the age of 50. A study published in the journal PLOS1 using data from the National Health and Nutrition Examinations Survey found that the prevalence of fatty liver was highest in men aged 50 to 59 at over 75% and in women aged 70 to 79 at nearly 69%. The numbers are staggering, and they are driven overwhelmingly by 5 specific foods that most people consume on a daily basis without thinking twice. The good news is that your liver is the only internal organ in your body capable of fully regenerating itself. Cut the right foods, and within months, the damage can begin to reverse. In this video, I want to walk through the 5 foods that are most responsible for the silent epidemic of fatty liver disease in people over 50, explain exactly how each one damages your liver at the cellular level, and give you the specific, evidence-based steps you can take to support your liver while it heals. And before we get to the 5 foods, I want to address something important. This video is not about rare or exotic foods that are easy to avoid. Every single food on this list is something that the average person over 50 consumes regularly, often without realizing the impact on their liver. It is the everyday foods, the ones that are marketed as normal or even healthy, that do the most damage over time. Eliminating or reducing these 5 foods will do more to protect your liver than any supplement, any cleanse, or any detox program you have ever heard of. The evidence for that is overwhelming. Before we get into the individual foods, you need to understand the mechanism that connects diet to liver damage. Because understanding the how makes it much easier to see why certain foods are so much more damaging than others. Your liver sits on the right side of your abdomen, just under your diaphragm. It weighs roughly 1.4 kilograms in an adult, and it performs over 500 distinct functions that are essential to keeping you alive. It filters your blood, it metabolizes medications, it produces bile to digest fat. It stores vitamins and minerals, it regulates blood sugar, it produces clotting factors. And critically for this conversation, it is your primary detoxification organ. Every substance that enters your digestive tract is absorbed into your bloodstream and passes through your liver before it reaches the rest of your body. This is called first-pass metabolism, and it means your liver gets the first and most concentrated dose of everything you eat and drink. When you consume a food that places a metabolic burden on the liver has to process it immediately and in high concentration. Here is what changes after 50. The volume of your liver decreases. Blood flow to the liver declines. The activity of its detoxification enzymes slows down. Research published in the journal Hepatology has documented that liver volume can decrease by as much as 30% between the ages of 50 and 80. The same foods that your liver could handle efficiently at 30 are now placing a significantly greater strain on an organ that is operating at reduced capacity. The fat accumulates faster, the inflammation lasts longer, the repair cycles take more time. That is the biological backdrop for everything you are about to read. And it is the reason why the 5 foods that follow are particularly dangerous after 50. The first food on the list is the single biggest contributor to fatty liver disease in the Western world: sugary drinks. And I want to be very specific about the mechanism here because it is counterintuitive and it is almost never explained clearly. When you drink a can of soda, a glass of sweetened iced tea, a fruit juice, or an energy drink, the sugar it contains is rapidly absorbed into your bloodstream. But the type of sugar matters enormously. Most sugary drinks are sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, which contains roughly equal parts glucose and fructose. Glucose is the sugar that your muscles and brain can use directly for energy. Your entire body is designed to metabolize glucose efficiently. Fructose is different. Fructose is metabolized almost exclusively by your liver. And the liver has a very specific response to a large influx of fructose. It converts it directly into fat through a metabolic process called de novo lipogenesis, which literally means new fat making. A landmark randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Hepatology compared the effects of beverages sweetened with fructose, sucrose, and glucose on liver fat production. The result was unambiguous. Fructose and sucrose, which contains fructose, both significantly increased the liver's production of new fat. Glucose did not. The fructose stimulated the liver to manufacture fat from scratch, even when total calorie intake was the same across the groups. To put this in concrete terms, a single can of soda contains roughly 40 grams of sugar, about half of which is fructose. That single can triggers a measurable spike in liver fat production within 30 minutes. The average American over 50 consumes more than 200 calories per day from sugary beverages alone. That is a daily sustained metabolic assault on an organ that is already processing less efficiently than it did at 30. A 2023 review published in the Journal of Endocrinology confirmed that fructose is a more potent inducer of hepatic lipogenesis than any other dietary sugar. And the single largest source of fructose in the average diet is not fruit. It is sweetened beverages. If there is one change that has the most evidence behind it for protecting your liver, it is eliminating sugary drinks. Research has shown that removing added fructose for just 9 days can begin to reverse fatty liver changes. 9 days. That is not years of dietary sacrifice. That is 9 days. The second food category is ultra-processed foods. And this category is broad, so let me be clear about what I mean. Ultra-processed foods are industrial formulations that contain ingredients you would not find in a home kitchen. They include things like preservatives, emulsifiers, stabilizers, artificial sweeteners, colorings, and flavor enhancers. Packaged snacks, frozen meals, sugary breakfast cereals, flavored yogurts, processed meats, instant noodles, packaged breads, and most commercially produced sauces and dressings. A 2025 systematic review and dose-response meta-analysis published in the journal Frontiers in Nutrition examined the relationship between ultra-processed food consumption and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. The conclusion was striking. Higher consumption of ultra-processed foods was associated with a significantly increased risk of NAFLD. The odds ratio was 1.72. That means a 72% increase in risk. But here's the finding that surprised even the researchers. A second study, this one from the UK Biobank, tracked over 143,000 participants and found that the association between ultra-processed foods and severe liver disease held true regardless of the person's body weight. You can be thin, eat ultra-processed foods, and still develop fatty liver. The reason is that the damage from ultra-processed foods is not simply about calorie content. It is about what these foods do to your gut. Certain emulsifiers commonly used in processed foods, particularly carboxymethylcellulose and polysorbate 80, have been shown to disrupt the lining of your intestine. The intestinal barrier becomes more permeable, a condition commonly referred to as leaky gut. When this happens, bacterial fragments and inflammatory compounds that would normally be contained within your digestive tract can pass through the intestinal wall and travel directly to your liver through the portal vein. Your liver responds by mounting an immune response. Chronic low-grade inflammation sets in, and over time, that inflammation drives the progression from simple fatty liver, which is reversible, to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or NASH, which involves active inflammation and liver cell damage. This progression is the step that turns a manageable condition into one that can lead to cirrhosis, liver failure, and an increased risk of liver cancer. The takeaway is clear. The ingredient list matters more than the calorie count. If a food has an ingredient list that reads like a chemistry experiment, your liver is going to pay the price. The third food category is fried foods and industrial trans fats. This includes deep-fried chicken, French fries, battered fish, donuts, and anything cooked in partially hydrogenated oil. Industrial trans fatty acids are chemically different from the fats that occur naturally in food. Your body does not have efficient metabolic pathways for processing them. And when they reach your liver, They cause specific, measurable damage that goes beyond simple fat accumulation. A study published in the journal Nutrients examined the effect of a diet rich in industrial trans fats on liver health. The researchers found that trans fats increase steatosis, which is the medical term for fat accumulation in the liver. They raised hepatic cholesterol concentrations, and critically, they elevated markers of fibrosis. Fibrosis is the formation of scar tissue in the liver. It is the stage of liver disease that precedes cirrhosis. It is the point at which damage becomes potentially irreversible. The mechanism behind this damage is mitochondrial. Trans fats disrupt the function of your mitochondria, which are the energy-producing structures inside your cells. When the mitochondria in your liver cells cannot function properly, they cannot efficiently burn fat. The fat accumulates inside the cell becomes engorged, and that triggers an inflammatory cascade that recruits immune cells to the liver, causing further damage and promoting the development of scar tissue. More recent research, published in 2025, has identified a specific additional pathway involving a compound called acrylamide. Acrylamide is formed when starchy foods like potatoes and battered foods are fried at high temperatures. The study found that acrylamide actively induces hepatic lipid disorders through the arachidonic acid PGE2-PPAR alpha signaling pathway. In plain English, the compound created by frying potatoes and battered foods programs your liver cells to store more fat. This is not a small effect. It is a direct chemical signal to your liver to increase fat storage, and it happens every time you eat deep-fried foods. The fourth food on the list is refined carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, pasta made from refined flour, crackers, breakfast cereals, bagels, and most baked goods made with white flour. These foods share a common characteristic. They have been stripped of their fiber. Fiber is what slows down the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. When fiber is removed, the carbohydrates in these foods are broken down rapidly into glucose and absorbed into your bloodstream, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, which tells your cells to take up glucose from the blood. But when the spike is large enough and when it happens repeatedly throughout the day, your liver gets flooded with more glucose than it can store as glycogen. The excess glucose is converted into fat through the same de novo lipogenesis pathway that we discussed with fructose. A study from the Framingham Offspring cohort, which is one of the longest-running cardiovascular research studies in the world, found that higher dietary glycemic index, which is a measure of how quickly a food raises blood sugar, was directly associated with higher fasting triglycerides and lower HDL cholesterol. Both are markers of increased liver fat production. The problem is significantly compounded after the age of 50. Insulin sensitivity naturally declines with age. A 2024 review in Frontiers in Nutrition confirmed that age-related insulin resistance means your liver is more likely to convert dietary carbohydrates into fat than it was in earlier decades. The same bowl of white pasta or the same slice of white bread that caused no issues at 30 is now actively contributing to liver fat accumulation. Here is a practical guideline that the research supports. If a carbohydrate food does not contain at least 3 grams of fiber per serving, your liver is going to metabolize it more like sugar than like a whole food. That includes most commercial bread, most breakfast cereals, and most pasta. Choosing whole grain alternatives with their fiber intact makes a real and measurable difference to how your liver processes those carbohydrates. The fifth food is alcohol, and I want to address this carefully because alcohol is socially normalized, widely consumed, and for many people, genuinely enjoyable. But the science on alcohol and the aging liver is clear, and it is more important than most people realize. Alcohol is metabolized primarily in the liver through 2 enzyme systems. The first is alcohol dehydrogenase, which converts alcohol into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a toxic compound that damages liver cells, causes inflammation, and promotes the formation of scar tissue. The second system is the cytochrome P450 system, which becomes more active in regular drinkers, but also generates free radicals that damage liver tissue. Here's the critical fact for anyone over 50. Research published in the journal Hepatology and cited extensively in the medical literature has confirmed that alcohol is more toxic in the aging liver. Older organs are significantly more sensitive to alcohol's toxicity, even at lower levels of intake. The same glass of wine that caused no measurable elevation in liver enzymes at 30 is now contributing to cellular stress and fat accumulation. A landmark study from the UK Million Women Study, published in the Lancet Public Health, followed over 1 million women for an average of 6 years. The researchers found that even moderate alcohol consumption, defined as 1 drink per day, significantly increased the risk of developing liver cirrhosis. Not heavy drinking, not binge drinking, 1 standard drink per day. After 50, the threshold for alcohol-related liver damage drops substantially. Your liver enzyme activity declines, your liver volume decreases. Your ability to regenerate damaged tissue slows down. The combination means that alcohol you previously tolerated without issue is now actively contributing to the fat accumulation and inflammatory cascade that defines fatty liver disease. And if you already have fatty liver, and remember that 38% of adults do, there is no truly safe amount of alcohol. If you want to give your liver the best chance to heal, reducing your alcohol intake as close to zero as your lifestyle allows is the single most impactful step you can take, alongside eliminating the other 4 foods we have discussed. Now, what can you do to actively support your liver while you remove these 5 foods from your diet? Because removing the damaging foods is only half the equation. The other half is giving your liver the raw materials it needs to repair the damage that has already been done. And there is one specific plant compound that the research consistently supports for liver health. It has been used for over 2,000 years, and the modern clinical evidence is stronger than ever. Silymarin is a complex of flavonolignin extracted from the seeds of the milk thistle plant, Silybum marianum, and its effects on the liver have been studied extensively. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis published in the journal BMC Complementary Medicine and Therapies evaluated the effects of silymarin on liver enzyme levels across multiple randomized controlled trials. The conclusion was clear. Silymarin significantly reduced serum levels of ALT, AST, and ALP, which are the 3 primary blood markers of liver stress and damage. A separate 2024 meta-analysis published in the European Journal of Gastroenterology and Hepatology specifically examined silymarin's effects in patients with NAFLD. The researchers found that doses of 140 to 420 milligrams per day, taken over 8 to 12 weeks, produced clinically meaningful reductions in liver inflammation and improvements in liver enzyme levels. The mechanism works through 2 distinct pathways. First, silymarin is a potent antioxidant that directly reduces oxidative stress in liver cells. Second, it has anti-inflammatory properties that inhibit the activation of hepatic stellate cells. These are the cells responsible for producing the scar tissue that drives liver fibrosis. By reducing both oxidative stress and fibrosis signaling, silymarin addresses 2 of the most important drivers of liver disease progression at the same time. Let me bring everything together into a clear, practical framework. Because the goal of this video is not just to tell you what the problem is, it is to give you a plan. Here is what the evidence supports for protecting and repairing your liver after 50. First, eliminate or drastically reduce the 5 foods we have covered. Replace sugary drinks with sparkling water, unsweetened tea, or black coffee. Replace ultra-processed snacks with whole foods like nuts, seeds, fruit, and vegetables. Replace fried foods with baked, grilled, or air-fried alternatives. Replace refined carbohydrates with whole grains that contain at least 3 grams of fiber per serving. And reduce your alcohol intake as close to zero as your lifestyle allows. Second, consider adding a milk thistle supplement standardized to 80% silymarin content. The research supports a daily dose of 140 to 420 milligrams of silymarin, taken with meals for optimal absorption. And remember what I said at the beginning of this video. Your liver is the only internal organ that can fully regenerate itself. It can replace damaged tissue with healthy new cells. It can clear accumulated fat. It can reduce inflammation. But it needs you to stop feeding it the 5 foods that are actively working against it. The research on this is about as clear as nutritional science gets. The 5 foods we covered are not speculative risks. They are established, well-documented, repeatedly confirmed drivers of liver damage in people over 50. And the good news is that removing them is entirely within your control. You do not need a prescription. You do not need a specialist. You do not need an expensive program. You just need to make different choices about what goes on your plate and into your glass. Stay consistent,